Hello everyone and welcome back to Directs and Dragons. Today I'm just doing a fantasy books tier list. That's the old simple tier list because it's easy and I'm tired. Okay, so I've just picked a bunch of fantasy books I've read. Don't judge me, I have not read anywhere near as much fantasy books as I would like. But let's get into it, starting with The Forest of Silence, the first book in the Del Toro quest by Emma Rodder. So it was okay. It was fine. It wasn't groundbreaking. I read that like 3 years ago. I was a lot younger then. And it's a good children's fantasy series, I think. I can understand why there are so many renditions in it. There's so many books in the series. Did I say rendition? I did. But no, the series was good. It had a good arc. It was a bit predictable. It was a good sort of generic series. So it's just going a sort of. Let's go with C. D is the only ones I hate. C is just meh. B is actually okay. A is it's pretty good, and S tier is just S tier. And I'm just going to throw Lord of the Rings straight up there now because it is the gold standard for fantasy books. Then we have The Way of Kings, the first book in the Stormlight Archive. So I have a few books in here from series, and I've all just picked the first book, the first entry, and yeah, and maybe a couple of novellas from the same series. Way of Kings is an excellent entry into the fantasy genre, and it holds its weight even, 5 years later now. And it is just amazing. Brandon Sanderson does a great job setting up this massive high fantasy world, and he just keeps up the pace throughout the rest of the series. But Way of Kings is something special with how it sets up characters like Kaladin, Dalinar. My watch is beeping at me. And one stuff. And Shalon. And what Brandon does in that book is just amazing. So I think I'm going to put this up in S tier as well, but below Lord of the Rings. It's not anywhere near Lord of the Rings, but I think it is an S tier book. Wait, it feels weird putting stuff in S tier, like putting Way of the Kings with S tier, or putting anything up in S tier with Lord of the Rings, but it is. And I almost enjoy it more than Lord of the Rings, just because of its modern writing style. Then we have The Ruins of Gorland, the first book of Ranger's Apprentice series. As you would see if you had watched my Ranger Apprentice tier list video, I think Ruins of Gorland is really good, but it's nowhere near the heights of the series, but it's not the depths either. So I think it's a good A tier book, but I think it's A tier in terms of Ranger's Apprentice books, but it's B tier in terms of all-round fantasy books. Then we have The Sea of Trolls, which by Nancy Farmer, which is a really good sort of Viking historical piece, but I'm putting it in fantasy because of the magical, mythological elements in it. Very much evokes the starting of Wizard of Earthsea, which I mean to get to soon. And I really enjoyed this. I feel like it's very well crafted, the characters really enjoyable, and the story and its historical elements and the way it's written I really enjoy. Also the audiobook narrated by Jared Doyle is amazing. I think Jared Doyle does fantasy books really well. He also did the Inheritance Cycle audiobooks, which again is one of my favourite series, despite its flaws. So I think I'm going to put this high B or low A. I think we'll see what else ends up in A tier. The Hobbit is going in A tier. It's nowhere near as good as Lord of the Rings, but it's a great children's story, and it's endured the test of time, let's say. And it is a great children's book, and was one of the first steps in my introduction to fantasy as a kid. And now we have Warbreaker, one of Brandon Sanderson's standalone Cosmere books, and in the terms of fantasy books, I think it goes A tier. I think Warbreaker is pretty good, but it's nowhere near as good as The Hobbit. And I know there's just such varying degrees of different types of books, and they're all very, different. So it's weird to judge them against each other. It's weird to judge Lord of the Rings against Forest of Silence. How should I be more harsh? Should I drop a lot of these down? I feel like I should do that. I don't know. I don't hate Forest of Silence, it just doesn't stand up to any of the other books. Maybe I'm being too kind on Ruins of Gorland because it's Ranger's Apprentice and I love Ranger's Apprentice. I don't know. Let's get to Eragon. Eragon is going in B. Yep. And it is a great high fantasy series. That was the other one that is awesome. The audiobook's awesome erased by Jared Doyle, who does a great job. I'm going to put Warbreaker above The Hobbit. But I'm going to put Eragon below Sea of Trolls. Then we have The Iron Trial. This is by Cassandra Clare. And I don't remember who the other one was. 2 authors. 1 second. Then we have The Iron Trial by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black, both who have other fantasy series under their belt. I particularly like Holly Black's work on the Spiderwick Chronicles, which I should have put on this tier list. Now I remember. But Iron Trial is very much feels like a Harry Potter ripoff. The first book follows a lot of the same beats as the Philosopher's Stone, just not as well. So I'm going to put it in C tier, below The Ranger's Apprentice. Then we have the Philosopher's Stone, first book of Harry Potter, which is going up in A tier between Warbreaker and The Hobbit. For obvious reasons, it started something amazing, and that's why I can justify putting it up that high, even if it maybe is the weakest entry in the Harry Potter series. It's also a lot shorter and aimed at a younger audience than its succeeding books. Then we have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I'm putting in S tier. I absolutely love this book. It is great, the prose are great, the writing style is just so much fun to read, and I never really got bored. Quoth is a really fun character to follow, his flaws just make him quite relatable, and it sort of overcomes any idea that he might be a Jerry Sue, which is also understandable, but I love how the book jumps around heaps from different places, and I love Patrick Rothfuss's ability to keep you engaged with the character, even in very disparate settings, from the streets of Tarbean to the university. Then we have The Wheel of Time, The Eye of the World, and Daniel Green will kill me for doing this, so I'm putting that in B. I didn't enjoy The Eye of the World very much. I'm only at the second book of Wheel of Time, and I'm not enjoying it heaps. Not as much as overhyped as it is. Maybe it's the writing style, the older style, that's holding me back. It feels very generic, and there's no story beats that are pulling me in enough to make me want to keep reading, other than obligation to read what is a very well respected book throughout the fantasy series. I'll put it up in A, but I'm sticking it below Harry Potter. I respect what it is and what it started, and how much it's respected by the fantasy community, enough to put it above Sea of Trolls and Eragon. But I just, in terms of my enjoyment, which is what this is about, is my enjoyment of the book, I didn't enjoy it that much. Next we have The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm going to throw that low B tier, mainly again, my enjoyment and how much it helped develop my love of fantasy. It's Christian fantasy. I love how it mixes the Christian themes and the sort of almost fairy tale mythological elements. Actually, I'm going to put it down in C, because it is quite a simple book series, and it's going to go there. Yep. It's quite simple, but it's charming simple. It's the same sort of, I read it as a kid at the same sort of time as I was reading The Hobbit, so again, it's a great entry point into fantasy for younger readers. Then we have The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. I've got a few Sanderson books on here. probably read the most Sanderson books of any author. I really love his body of work. Alloy of Law, no, it's not as good as Way of Kings, and it's also not the heights of the series. So I'm going to throw this top of B tier, because I think it fits there. And yep, I feel like that's good. What I'm sort of noticing a pattern here is the S tier are your like supreme ones, the A tier are the well-respected ones, and the B tier are the sort of more almost maybe you could almost got the junk food of fantasy. It's still got meat and it's really enjoyable, but it's nothing ever overly dense, and it's not as highbrow as a lot of the other stuff. I don't know, but it still does have its own charm. I actually enjoyed. I don't know. I think I enjoyed Aragon. I'm putting Aragon above Sea of Trolls. I'm not putting it above Alloy of Law because I feel like Alloy of Law is a better book, even if I may have enjoyed Aragon more. I have to balance all these factors. It's hard doing tier lists. I almost feel like I should put Line Which Wardrobe down D with Forest of Silence, but I don't know. It is quite a simple. I don't know. I haven't read Line the Witch Wardrobe in ages. I'm going to leave it there. Then we have The Wizards of Once by Christa Cowell. She was also the author of the How to Train Your Dragon book series that then got developed into the movies. And I actually think the Wizards of Once series is better, or I enjoy it better than How to Train Your Dragon book series. Taking out of account nostalgia and how much How to Train Dragon developed my love for dragons and fantasy in my childhood, I am putting Wizards of Once top of B. I think the book itself, though shorter and maybe arguably simpler, is a much more enjoyable read, and it's much better paced than the first Ranger's Apprentice book. Though it's also not, the Wizards of Once series isn't completed, as maybe half of the books on this list. I think it still deserves its spot at the top of C. How to Train Your Dragon, the first book, is going bottom of C, and I am knocking Line of Witch Wardrobe down to D, but it's better than Forest of Silence. Yep, I think How to Train Your Dragon goes there. The series, it's a very soft start for the series that actually turns quite dark for children's books. By the end, by How to Fight a Dragon's Fury, which you may have noticed in my new setup is now on my shelf, proudly displayed, because that was such a big part of my introduction to fantasy. But I think it goes there quite well. It's a children's book. It's very slapstick, children's humor, but what it develops into is something quite incredible. Is it go above the Iron Trial? It does, because I don't like where the Iron Trial goes. I feel Iron Trial is the best book, and it kind of just goes downhill from there. But How to Train Your Dragon just gets better and better from the first book. Then we have Discworld by Terry Pratchett. No, not Discworld. Then we have Color of Magic, which is the only Discworld book I've read. I have the other ones, I just haven't started reading them yet, or listening to them. And wow, I really enjoyed it. It's just such a fun, clever, slapsticky book, and it's going to go up in B. And I enjoyed it more than Sea of Trolls. I'm not dissing Sea of Trolls. Actually, no, it's going to go below Sea of Trolls. I feel like Sea of Trolls is better, and it's actually a really good fantasy book. Then we have The Lost Hero, which is the first book of Heroes of Olympus, which is the sequel series to Percy Jackson. I don't know why I didn't put Percy Jackson on here, but I didn't, so deal. Lost Hero is good. It's modern fantasy. It's a lot more mythology, but it's very well written. I think it deserves to place to the middle of B, though the series does get better. I'll put it up in B a bit more. I feel weird putting Lost Hero above Brandon Sanderson. I'm actually going to put top of B because it's really good and the series only gets better. Then we have The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, which is a Inheritance Cycle novella set after the main series. And that is going to go where is that going to go? Just above Aragon, because Paolini's development as a writer is much more evident, but it's a collection of 3 short stories, so he doesn't have as much time to flesh out their characters and the heroes in those 3 short stories, but they are great additions to the lore and mythology of the Inheritance Cycle world of Allegasia. And now we have Final One's Final Empire, which is the first Mistborn book. And I'm sticking that firmly at the top of A. I think it is extremely good, but I don't think Mistborn reaches the highs of Name of the Wind, Lord of the Rings, and The Way of Kings. Though it's extremely good and is a hallmark of modern fantasy, I feel, I don't feel like the first book is as good as the rest of them, I didn't enjoy it and I wasn't entertained by it anywhere near as much as I was by those top 3 books. That being said, it is leaps and bounds better as a book than almost all the other ones below it. That's it for my fantasy books tier list. This should be up. Go away. That's it for my fantasy books tier list. If you guys enjoyed it, thank you if you got this far. If you got this far, maybe you enjoyed the video. So you know what you could do if you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button. Yeah. See ya. Bye.